Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that most of your stress does not come from your problems. It comes from people. Not because people are evil, not because the world is against you, but because somewhere along the way, you gave other people permission to control your emotions. You gave strangers the power to ruin your day. You gave critics the power to steal your confidence. You gave people who do not even know your story the power to influence how you see yourself. And perhaps the most painful truth is this: many of the people whose opinions affect you the most have never earned that right. Think about it. One negative comment can stay in your mind for weeks. One rejection can haunt you for years. One insult can replay in your head 1,000 times. Yet the person who said those words may have forgotten them 5 minutes later. This is the tragedy of modern life. People throw their words carelessly, but you carry them like heavy stones. The Stoics saw this problem more than 2,000 years ago. Human nature has not changed. People still judge. People still criticize. People still gossip. People still misunderstand. The difference is that today we carry these voices everywhere through our phones, social media, and constant connectivity. Never before have so many people had access to your attention, and never before has attention been so valuable. The Stoics believed that attention is the doorway to the soul. Whatever enters repeatedly eventually shapes your character. If you constantly listen to negativity, negativity becomes part of you. If you constantly focus on criticism, criticism becomes your reality. If you constantly seek approval, approval becomes your addiction. An addiction is never freedom. The truth is that most people spend their entire lives imprisoned, not by chains, not by walls, but by opinions. They cannot make a decision without wondering what. Others will think. They cannot pursue a dream without seeking validation. They cannot express themselves honestly because they fear judgment. Their prison exists entirely inside their minds, and yet it feels more real than any physical cage. This is why the Stoics placed such importance on inner freedom. To them, freedom was not about money. It was not about status. It was not about power. True freedom was the ability to remain emotionally independent from the opinions of others, because once another person's approval becomes necessary for your happiness, you become their servant. Think carefully about that. Every time your mood depends on someone else's validation, they gain power over your life. Every time your self-worth depends on praise, praise becomes a necessity. Every time your peace depends on others behaving exactly as you want, peace becomes impossible. Because people are unpredictable. People change. People disappoint. People misunderstand. People judge based on their own fears, insecurities, and experiences. Expecting everyone to understand you is like expecting the weather to obey your emotions. It simply does not work. Yet millions of people spend their lives fighting this reality. They want everyone to like them. They want everyone to approve. They want everyone to understand. And because these goals are impossible, they live in constant frustration. The Stoics offered a different path. Instead of controlling people, control yourself. Instead of changing opinions, strengthen your mind. Instead of seeking approval, develop character. Because character remains when approval disappears. One day, a young student asked the philosopher Epictetus, How to avoid being hurt by criticism. Many people expected a complicated answer, perhaps a technique, perhaps a secret, perhaps a strategy. But Epictetus understood something deeper. He knew the problem was not criticism itself. The problem was dependence. A person dependent on approval suffers whenever approval is withdrawn. A person dependent on praise suffers whenever praise disappears. A person dependent on acceptance suffers whenever rejection arrives. The solution was not learning how to stop criticism. The solution was becoming independent from it. Imagine a tree standing in a storm. If its roots are shallow, every wind becomes dangerous. But if its roots go deep into the earth, even violent storms cannot uproot it. Most people have shallow roots. Their confidence depends on circumstances. Their happiness depends on outcomes. Their self-worth depends on other people. So every criticism becomes a storm. Every rejection becomes an earthquake. Every insult becomes a crisis. The Stoics wanted deeper roots. Roots built on principles rather than praise. Roots built on values rather than validation. Roots built on self-respect rather than popularity. Because when your roots are deep, people can shake the branches, but they cannot destroy the tree. Think about the strongest people you have ever met. Not the loudest dot, not the richest dot, not the most famous. The strongest dot. They share a common quality. They are not easily disturbed. They do not react to every opinion. They do not chase every argument. They do not feel obligated to explain themselves to everyone. Why? Because they understand something most people never learn. Not every battle deserves your attention. Imagine walking through a city and seeing a dog bark at every passing car. The dog believes every vehicle deserves a reaction. Every sound demands a response. Every movement requires attention. As a result, the dog exhausts itself. Many people live exactly this way. Every criticism gets a response. Every insult gets a reaction. Every disagreement becomes a fight. Every opinion becomes a threat. By the end of the day, they are emotionally exhausted. Not because life is difficult, but because they reacted to everything. The Stoics taught selective attention, the ability to decide what deserves entry into your mind. Because your mind is like a home. If you leave the front door open, anyone can walk inside. Negative people, toxic ideas, pointless drama, endless distractions. Eventually, your home becomes crowded with things that do not belong there. Ignoring people is often the act of closing that door, not out of hatred, not out of arrogance, but out of wisdom. You are deciding who gets access to your mental space, and that decision determines the quality of your life. Consider Marcus Aurelius. He ruled an empire. Millions depended on his decisions. Every action invited criticism. Every policy created opposition. Every success created jealousy. If Marcus Aurelius had tried to satisfy everyone, he would have spent every moment defending himself. Instead, he focused on something more important. His own character. He understood a profound truth. You can spend your entire life explaining yourself and still be misunderstood. Let that sink in. No matter how clearly you speak, some people will misunderstand. No matter how honest you are, some people will doubt you. no matter how kind you are. Some people will dislike you because their judgment says more about them than it does about you. This realization changes everything. When you understand that, not all criticism is accurate. You stop treating every opinion like truth. When you understand that many judgments come from insecurity, jealousy, ignorance, or projection, you stop giving them power. And when you stop giving them power, you reclaim your peace. The strongest people in history understood this. They knew greatness requires disappointing some people. Every meaningful decision excludes certain possibilities. Every commitment creates trade dash-offs. Every path leaves other paths unexplored. As a result, someone will always disagree. Someone will always criticize. Someone will always complain. If your goal is universal approval, greatness becomes impossible, because greatness often requires standing alone. It requires believing in yourself before anyone else does. It requires continuing forward when others doubt you. It requires trusting your values when the crowd disagrees. And none of that is possible if you are addicted to approval. The day you stop needing everyone to agree with you is the day your real life begins. Suddenly, decisions become easier. Goals become clearer. Confidence becomes stronger, because your energy is no longer scattered across 1,000 opinions. It becomes focused, directed, purposeful. This is why ignoring people can become a superpower. Not because you stop caring, but because you start caring about the right things. You care about integrity. You care about discipline. You care about growth. You care about truth. And you stop caring about meaningless noise. Most people never discover this freedom. They spend decades trapped inside invisible cages built from other people's expectations. They become versions of themselves, designed to please everyone. And in pleasing everyone, they lose themselves. The Stoic path is different. It asks a difficult question. Who would you become if you stopped seeking approval? Would you pursue different goals? Would you make different choices? Would you speak more honestly? Would you live more courageously? Would you finally become yourself? Because beneath every fear of judgment lies an authentic version of you waiting to emerge. A version that does not need permission. A version that does not require validation. A version that understands its worth is not determined by applause. The crowd may cheer. The crowd may criticize. The crowd may ignore you entirely. But none of those things determine your value. Your value comes from your character, your actions, your principles, your integrity, things that no critic can take away. And once you truly understand this, something remarkable happens. The opinions that once controlled you begin losing their power. The insults that once hurt you begin sounding empty. The judgments that once haunted you begin fading into the background. Not because people changed, but because you changed. You stopped giving strangers authority over your inner world. You stopped handing out pieces of your peace. You stopped allowing every passing opinion to become a permanent resident in your mind. Imagine someone insults you publicly. They attack your character. They question your worth. They spread lies about you. In that moment, your heart begins to race. Your mind immediately starts preparing a response. You imagine proving them wrong. You imagine exposing their flaws. You imagine delivering the perfect comeback that leaves them speechless. Most people believe this is strength. Most people believe power means fighting back. Most people believe respect is earned through dominance. But the Stoics saw something that most people never understand. The person who controls your reaction controls you. Read that again. The person who controls your reaction controls you. If someone can make you angry whenever they want, they possess power over your emotional state. If someone can ruin your day with a few words, they possess influence over your happiness. If someone can pull you into endless arguments, they dictate where your attention goes. The Stoics considered this a form of slavery. Not physical slavery, emotional slavery. And they believed true freedom begins when you stop allowing other people to control your inner world. The world teaches us to fight every battle. Stoicism teaches us to choose our battles carefully. There is a massive difference. One path leads to exhaustion. The other leads to peace. Imagine a king sitting on his throne. Suddenly, a child throws a stone at the palace wall. Does the king abandon his kingdom to chase the child through the streets? Of course not, because the king understands something important. Not every action deserves a reaction. Not every challenge deserves engagement. Not every insult deserves acknowledgement. Yet most people live as if every criticism is an emergency. Every disagreement becomes a war. Every slight becomes a personal attack. Every negative comment becomes a reason to suffer. As a result, they spend their lives fighting battles that never mattered. Their minds become battlefields. Their peace becomes impossible. Their focus disappears. And the saddest part is that many of these battles were optional from the beginning. The Stoics believed emotional control is one of the highest forms of power. Not because emotions are bad, but because uncontrolled emotions make you predictable. When someone knows exactly how to trigger you, they can manipulate you. They know which buttons to press, that they know how to provoke you. They know how to steal your peace. This is why wise people become difficult to provoke. Not because they lack emotions, but because they have mastered them. Think about fire. A small spark can warm a home, but an uncontrolled fire destroys everything in its path. Anger works the same way. Controlled anger can inspire action. Uncontrolled anger destroys judgment. Many people ruin relationships, careers, and opportunities because they react emotionally in temporary moments. A few seconds of anger create years of regret. The Stoics wanted something greater than temporary satisfaction. They wanted mastery, and mastery begins with silence. Silence is misunderstood. Many people assume silence means weakness. They assume silence means surrender. They assume silence means fear. But often silence is the highest expression of self-control. Imagine two men standing face to face. One is shouting, insulting, threatening, trying desperately to provoke a reaction. The other remains calm. He listens, he breathes, he stays composed. Who possesses more power? The man who cannot control his emotions, or the man who refuses to lose control? The answer is obvious. Real strength is revealed under pressure. Anyone can appear calm when life is easy. Anyone can seem patient when nothing challenges them. The true test comes during conflict. The true test comes when someone tries to drag you into chaos. And that is where silence becomes a weapon. Not a weapon against others, a weapon against your own impulses. Because your greatest enemy is often not the person standing in front of you. It is the emotional reaction rising inside you. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca warned repeatedly about anger. He described anger as temporary madness. Think about that phrase. Temporary madness. Because when people become angry, they often behave in ways they would never choose during moments of clarity. They say things they regret. They make decisions they later wish they could undo. They damage relationships that took years to build. Then, when the emotion fades, they face the consequences. The insult may have lasted 5 seconds. The consequences may last forever. This is why Stoics trained themselves to pause. To create space between stimulus and response. To refuse immediate reactions. Because within that pause lies freedom. Within that pause lies wisdom. Within that pause lies power. Most people react. Stoics reflect. Most people explode. Stoics observe. Most people seek revenge. Stoics seek understanding. And this difference changes everything. Revenge feels attractive because it promises satisfaction. Someone hurts you. You want them to hurt too. Someone humiliates you. You want to humiliate them. Someone betrays you. You want them to experience betrayal. At first, this desire feels natural, but the Stoics asks an important question. What exactly does revenge accomplish? Will it erase the insult? Will it undo the betrayal? Will it restore lost time? Will it heal your wounds? Usually not. In fact, revenge often creates new suffering. The person who hurts you occupies your mind even longer. You continue thinking about them, planning against them, obsessing over them. Meanwhile, your own growth stops. Your attention remains trapped. Your future becomes hostage to your past. The Stoics refused to give enemies that kind of power. They understood something profound. The greatest revenge is becoming indifferent. Imagine someone spends years trying to bring you down. They insult you, criticize you, undermine you, yet you continue growing. You continue succeeding. You continue finding peace. Eventually, they realize something. They failed. Because despite all their efforts, they never gained control over your spirit. This is true victory. Not destroying your enemy, transcending them. Most people think victory means winning against others. The Stoics believed victory means winning against yourself, winning against anger, winning against ego, winning against resentment, winning against the impulses that keep ordinary people trapped. This kind of victory creates freedom. External victories create temporary satisfaction. Internal victories create lasting peace. Think about a lake. When the water is disturbed, it becomes impossible to see clearly. But when the water becomes still, everything becomes visible. The mind works the same way. Anger clouds judgment. Resentment clouds perception. Hatred clouds wisdom. Silence restores clarity. Stillness restores perspective. This is why powerful people often appear calm. They understand that emotional reactions usually benefit the person provoking them. If someone insults you and you lose control, they win. If someone spreads negativity and you become consumed by rage, they win. If someone distracts you from your goals and you abandon your focus, they win. Your reaction becomes their victory. But when you remain composed, something different happens. Their power disappears. Their influence weakens. Their ability to affect you fades, because their success depended on your reaction. Without it, they have nothing. This does not mean becoming passive. Stoicism never teaches passivity. It teaches there are times when action is necessary. There are times when boundaries must be established. There are times when injustice must be confronted. But these actions should emerge from wisdom, not rage. From clarity, not revenge. From strength, not emotional chaos. A Stoic does not remain silent because they are afraid. A Stoic remains silent because they understand timing. They understand consequences. They understand that not every impulse deserves expression. The strongest warriors are not those who swing their swords constantly. The strongest warriors are those who know when not to draw them. Modern life constantly pressures you to react. Social media rewards outrage. News feeds reward anger. Algorithms reward emotional responses. Every day, people compete for your attention. They want your clicks, your outrage, your emotional investment. Because emotional people are easier to control. The Stoics would likely see this as one of the greatest challenges of our time. A world designed to provoke. World designed to distract. A world designed to keep your mind restless. The solution remains the same as it was 2,000 years ago. Protect your attention. Guard your peace. Choose your responses carefully. Do not allow every opinion to enter your mind. Do not allow every conflict to become your conflict. Do not allow every insult to become your burden, because your attention is your life. Whatever receives your attention receives your energy. Whatever receives your energy grows. Feed peace and peace grows. Feed anger and anger grows. Feed resentment and resentment grows. Feed wisdom and wisdom grows. The choice belongs to you every single day. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is this: the people who hurt you most are often teaching you the value of self-control. Without difficult people, patience cannot develop. Without critics, resilience cannot develop. Without insults, emotional mastery cannot develop. Every challenge becomes training. Every provocation becomes practice. Every difficult person becomes an unexpected teacher. The Stoics understood that life itself is a school. Every obstacle contains a lesson. Every hardship contains an opportunity. Every insult contains a choice. Will you react, or will you rise above it? Because in the end, silence is not about ignoring others. It is about mastering yourself. It is about becoming so strong internally that external noise loses its power. It is about refusing to let temporary emotions control permanent decisions. It is about choosing peace when chaos is available. It is about choosing wisdom when revenge feels tempting. There is a prison that holds millions of people. You cannot see its walls. You cannot touch its bars. Yet it controls countless lives every single day. People enter this prison as children and often remain there until the day they die. The prison is called the fear of other people's opinions. Most people never realize how much of their life is controlled by this fear. They choose careers based on what others will respect. They wear clothes based on what others will approve. They hide dreams because others might laugh. They silence opinions because others might disagree. They stay in relationships because others might judge them for leaving. They avoid opportunities because others might think they will fail. Little by little, year after year, they build a life around other people's expectations. Then one day they wake up and realize something heartbreaking. They have spent their entire lives trying to become someone everyone else wanted them to be. And in the process, they forgot who they truly are. This is one of the greatest tragedies of the human experience. Not failure, not poverty, not rejection. The greatest tragedy is abandoning yourself to gain approval from people who were never truly paying attention in the first place. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that one of the biggest obstacles to peace is the constant need for validation. Because the moment your happiness depends on another person's approval, your freedom disappears. Imagine carrying a mirror everywhere you go. Every few seconds, you look into it. Not to see yourself, but to see how others see you. You constantly adjust. You constantly perform. You constantly change yourself to match what you think people want. Eventually, you lose sight of your real face. This is what happens when people become obsessed with public opinion. They stop living authentically. They begin performing, and performance is exhausting. The reason so many people feel emotionally drained is because they are acting every day. Acting strong, acting successful, acting confident, acting happy, acting like they have everything together. Meanwhile, inside, they are terrified of being judged. The Stoics offered a different way of living. A life based on authenticity rather than approval. A life based on character rather than popularity. A life based on truth rather than performance. But embracing this path requires courage, because the moment you stop living for approval, some people become uncomfortable. When you stop seeking validation, people lose leverage over you. When you stop explaining every decision, people lose control over your choices. When you stop apologizing for being yourself, people lose the ability to manipulate your identity. This is why personal freedom often creates resistance. People become accustomed to controlling others through approval and disapproval. The moment you stop participating in that game, everything changes. The philosopher Epictetus once taught that if you want to improve, you must be willing to appear foolish in the eyes of others. Think about that. Most people never pursue greatness because they are afraid of looking foolish. They are afraid of failing publicly, afraid of criticism, afraid of rejection, afraid of embarrassment. As a result, they stay where it is safe. But safety often comes with a hidden cost. The cost is unrealized potential. Every great achievement in history required someone to risk judgment. Every inventor, every entrepreneur, every artist, every leader, every philosopher. At some point, they faced doubt. At some point, they were criticized. At some point, people questioned them. If they had listened to every opinion, they would never have achieved anything remarkable. This is one of the hardest lessons in life. The people whose approval you desperately seek are often not qualified to guide your path. Many people criticize because they are afraid. Others criticize because they are jealous. Others criticize because your courage reminds them of their own limitations. And some criticize simply because criticism is easier than growth. The Stoics understood that you must carefully evaluate whose voice deserves influence. Not all opinions carry equal weight. Imagine taking health advice from someone who neglects their own health, or financial advice from someone drowning in debt. It would make no sense, yet people regularly allow unhappy individuals to shape their emotional lives. They accept judgments from people they would never seek advice from. This is irrational. The Stoic approach is simple. Respect everyone, but do not surrender your mind to everyone. Listen carefully, but think independently. Remain open, but remain grounded. Because the crowd is often wrong. History proves this repeatedly. The crowd mocked visionaries. The crowd rejected innovators. The crowd resisted change. The crowd often chooses comfort over truth. If your goal is universal approval, you will always follow the crowd. And if you always follow the crowd, you will never discover your own path. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius understood this reality better than most. Despite possessing immense power, he constantly reminded himself that fame is temporary. Praise is temporary. Public opinion is temporary. Even the people praising you today may criticize you tomorrow. Human attention shifts constantly. One day you are celebrated. The next day you are forgotten. One day people admire you. The next day they move on to someone else. Building your identity on public approval is like building a house on sand. Eventually it collapses. The Stoics encourage building your life on something stronger, character. Because character remains when popularity disappears. Integrity remains when praise vanishes. Self-respect remains when validation ends. And these qualities create a stability that external approval never can. Many people spend decades chasing admiration. They want recognition, respect, attention. Status. Yet even when they receive these things, satisfaction remains temporary. Why? Because external validation behaves like a drug. The more you receive, the more you need. A compliment feels good for a moment. Then you need another. Recognition feels good for a moment. Then you want more. Soon your emotional state depends entirely on external reinforcement. This creates endless dependence. The Stoics sought independence. Not because they rejected relationships, not because they rejected society, but because they understood that true confidence must come from within. Imagine two people. The first person feels valuable only when others praise them. The second person feels valuable because they know their character. Which person is stronger? The answer is obvious. The first person's confidence can disappear with a single insult. The second person's confidence remains stable because it is rooted internally. This is the difference between borrowed confidence and earned confidence. Borrowed confidence depends on other people. Earned confidence depends on self-respect. One is fragile. The other is resilient. One can be taken away. The other becomes part of who you are. Most people spend years trying to look confident. Stoicism teaches you to become confident, and there is a massive difference. Looking confident is performance. Becoming confident is transformation. Transformation occurs when your actions align with your values, when you keep promises to yourself, when you remain disciplined even when nobody is watching, when you act according to your principles, regardless of public opinion. This creates self-trust, and self-trust creates confidence. The reason many people care so deeply about judgment is because they secretly doubt themselves. When you are uncertain about your worth, criticism feels dangerous. When you know your worth, criticism becomes information rather than identity. A strong tree does not panic because the wind blows. It understands its roots. Likewise, a strong person does not collapse because someone disapproves. They understand themselves. One of the most liberating realizations in life is understanding how little people actually think about you. Most people are too busy worrying about themselves. They are focused on their own insecurities, their own problems, their own fears, their own struggles. The judgment you fear often exists only in your imagination. You spend hours worrying about what people might think. Meanwhile, they are worrying about what others think of them. It is a strange irony of human nature. Everyone is worried about everyone else's opinions. And because of that, nobody is paying nearly as much attention as we imagine. This realization can set you free. You do not need permission to pursue your goals. You do not need approval to become who you are meant to be. You do not need consensus to follow your path. You only need courage. The courage to disappoint some people. The courage to be misunderstood. The courage to be criticized. The courage to stand alone when necessary. Because every meaningful life requires these sacrifices. No great journey is universally applauded. No authentic path receives unanimous support, and no extraordinary person escapes criticism. The question is not whether people will judge you. They will. The question is whether you will allow their judgment to determine your future. Because every time fear stops you from acting, someone else's opinion becomes more powerful than your dreams. And that is a price too high to pay. Years from now, you will not regret the criticism you received. You will regret the opportunities you abandoned because you feared criticism. You will not regret being misunderstood. You will regret misunderstanding yourself. You will not regret disappointing others. You will regret disappointing your own potential. The Stoics understood that life is short, far shorter than most people realize. One day, all the opinions you worried about will disappear. The people judging you will disappear. The conversations will disappear. The criticisms will disappear. Even the praise will disappear. What remains is the life you lived, the choices you made, the person you became. And that is why one of the hardest lessons in life is accepting that not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. People come. People go. Promises are made. Promises are broken. Friendships bloom. Friendships fade. Love appears. Love disappears. And somewhere between these arrivals and departures, the human heart learns one of its most painful truths. Nothing external is permanent. Most suffering begins when we refuse to accept this reality. We become attached to people, situations, expectations, and outcomes. Then, when life changes as it always does, we resist. We fight reality. We replay memories. We ask endless questions. Why did they leave? Why did they betray me? Why did they change? Why wasn't I enough? And these questions become chains. Not because the event itself continues to hurt us, but because we continue carrying it. The Stoics understood something that many people spend their entire lives trying to learn. Pain is often unavoidable. Suffering is often optional. Pain happens when someone disappoints you. Pain happens when trust is broken. Pain happens when someone you love walks away. But suffering begins when you refuse to let go. Suffering begins when you keep reopening the wounds. Suffering begins when you relive the same memory 1,000 times. Most people do not realize this. They think they are hurt by what happened. In reality, they are often hurt by their attachment to what should have happened. This distinction changes everything. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more sand escapes through your fingers. The harder you try to hold on, the faster you lose it. Relationships work much the same way. Life works much the same way. The Stoics believed that peace comes not from possessing things forever, but from appreciating them while they exist. This includes people. One of the greatest causes of emotional suffering is the illusion of permanence. We secretly assume people will always remain the same. We assume loyalty will never change. We assume relationships will last forever. We assume circumstances will remain stable. Then reality reminds us otherwise. People evolve. People change. People drift apart. People disappoint. And when reality collides with expectation, pain emerges. The philosopher Epictetus taught his students a powerful exercise. When you kiss your child, remember that they are mortal. When you embrace someone you love, remember they are temporary. At first. This sounds cold, almost harsh. But the lesson was not about becoming emotionless. The lesson was about becoming grateful. Because when you understand that nothing lasts forever, you stop taking things for granted. You stop assuming tomorrow is guaranteed. You begin appreciating the present moment. Most people only recognize value after loss. The Stoics wanted to recognize value before loss. This creates a profound shift in perspective. Instead of desperately clinging to people, you learn to cherish them. Instead of fearing endings, you learn to appreciate beginnings. Instead of demanding permanence, you learn acceptance. This is emotional detachment. And emotional detachment is often misunderstood. Many people think detachment means not caring. That is not Stoicism. Stoicism does not teach indifference toward people. It teaches independence from outcomes. You can love deeply without becoming dependent. You can care deeply without losing yourself. You can value relationships without making them the source of your identity. The problem arises when your happiness becomes attached to another person's behavior. When your peace depends on their presence. When your self depends on their validation. When your future depends entirely on their choices. Because then your emotional stability becomes fragile. You hand over control of your inner world, and whenever they leave, your entire foundation collapses. The Stoics wanted stronger foundations. Foundations built on character rather than circumstances. Foundations built on self-respect rather than external validation. Foundations built on wisdom rather than attachment. Think about a ship crossing the ocean. Storms are inevitable. Waves are inevitable. Strong winds are inevitable. A wise captain does not try to eliminate storms. He strengthens the ship. Likewise, the Stoics did not try to eliminate heartbreak. They strengthened the mind. Because no matter how carefully you live, loss will eventually arrive. Someone will disappoint you. Someone will leave. Someone will betray your trust. Someone will misunderstand your intentions. The question is not whether these experiences will happen. The question is how prepared you are when they do. Many people collapse emotionally because they built their entire identity around another person. When that person leaves, they no longer know who they are. Their purpose disappears. Their confidence disappears. Their direction disappears. The Stoics warned against this. Not because relationships are unimportant, but because your identity should never depend entirely on something outside your control. Imagine giving someone the keys to your house. Now, imagine giving someone the keys to your emotional state. Many people do this without realizing it. One message can determine their mood. One compliment can determine their confidence. One rejection can determine their self-worth. This is emotional dependence. And dependence creates vulnerability. The Stoics sought something different. Emotional sovereignty. The ability to remain centered regardless of external events, not because they lacked emotions, but because they refused to become enslaved by them. Consider the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius during his life. He faced betrayal from trusted allies. He lost children. He endured war. He experienced immense personal suffering. Yet throughout these hardships, he repeatedly reminded himself of a simple truth. You cannot control what happens. You can control how you respond. This is the foundation of emotional resilience. Life does not ask permission before delivering challenges. Loss arrives unexpectedly. Disappointment arrives unexpectedly. Change arrives unexpectedly. Your power lies in your response, and your response depends on your mindset. Most people see betrayal as proof that everyone is untrustworthy. The Stoics saw betrayal differently. They viewed it as information about another person's character, not information about their own worth. This distinction is crucial. When someone betrays you, many people immediately ask, "What's wrong with me? Why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong?" But another person's actions do not define your value. Their choices belong to them. Their behavior reflects their character, not yours. Imagine a person throwing mud at a diamond. The mud may temporarily cover the diamond, but it cannot change what the diamond is. Likewise, someone's betrayal may hurt you, but it cannot diminish your worth unless you allow it. This is one of the greatest Stoic lessons. Never let another person's actions determine how you see yourself. People leave for countless reasons. People betray for countless reasons. People disrespect for countless reasons. Many of those reasons have nothing to do with you. They arise from fear, insecurity, immaturity, confusion, self-interest. Yet, many people absorb these actions personally. They internalize them. They make them part of their identity. And in doing so, they create unnecessary suffering. The Stoics encouraged a different perspective. Observe, understand, learn, then let go. Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting another person to suffer. The person who hurt you may have moved on years ago, yet you continue carrying the burden. You continue replaying the memory. You continue reopening the wound. Meanwhile, your peace remains trapped in the past. Emotional detachment means reclaiming that peace. It means refusing to let yesterday's pain control today's life. It means understanding that forgiveness is not always about the other person. Sometimes forgiveness is about setting yourself free. Many people confuse forgiveness with approval. They are not the same. You can forgive without forgetting. You can forgive without reconciling. You can forgive without allowing someone back into your life. Forgiveness simply means refusing to carry the weight any longer. Refusing to allow another person's actions to occupy space in your mind forever. This is freedom. One of the most painful experiences in life is being ignored. Humans naturally crave connection. We want to feel seen, valued, acknowledged. When someone ignores us, it can feel like rejection. But the Stoics taught something powerful. Your value does not decrease because someone fails to recognize it. A sunset remains beautiful whether people watch it or not. A mountain remains magnificent whether people admire it or not. Diamond remains valuable whether people notice it or not. Likewise, your worth does not depend on external recognition. The need to be constantly acknowledged is another form of dependence. The Stoics sought self-sufficiency, not isolation, not loneliness, but the ability to remain whole, even when others fail to appreciate them. This creates tremendous strength, because once you stop needing constant validation, people lose the ability to manipulate you through approval or rejection. You become free, and freedom is powerful. Perhaps the greatest lesson of emotional detachment is this. Everything in life is borrowed relationships, possessions opportunities experiences, even life itself. Nothing belongs to us forever. Everything is temporary. At first, this realization feels sad, but eventually it becomes liberating. Because once you stop demanding permanence, you stop fearing change. You begin appreciating moments without clinging to them. You begin loving people without trying to possess them. You begin living fully without fearing endings. And this transforms your entire relationship with life. The Stoics understood that emotional strength is not about becoming hard. It is about becoming flexible. A rigid tree breaks during a storm. A flexible tree bends and survives.